Welcome, everyone. Welcome to my weekly Real Estate Investors Hangout. I'm so glad you all could make it this week. This week, I've been away on vacation for 2 weeks, so I'm trying to get back in the swing of things. So I'm really happy that everyone could come and join me tonight. Tonight, I have a special guest, and I'm very honored to have Ryan Lundquist from Sacramento. And Ryan is an appraiser in Sacramento. He also writes an excellent blog that's followed by a lot of people, the Sacramento Appraisal blog. And he tonight is going to talk to us about how to value the deal that you're going into and all the ins and outs about comparing apples to oranges and things like that, add-ons and square footage, all the little tricks and tips. And he's also going to talk about estimating your after repair value, because as you know, that's really important when you're doing a rehab. So I'm really happy that Ryan was able to make it. I've been asking him for a couple months, and this is the first time he could fit it into his schedule. So we're really honored to have him, with us tonight, and to be able for him to share his time with us. So I'm going to put Ryan on the screen, and I'm going to go ahead. There's a poll loaded there. If you guys could fill it out, it just asks you how many deals you've done, and it gives us an idea of who's in the audience and what their experience is. So there's a little bit of a poll loaded on the right-hand side. And to welcome everyone, if you're coming from Google+, Facebook, Twitter, or you're watching right on Webinar Jam, we're simultaneously broadcasting in those locations. So I'm really happy to have people from all those social media sites with us tonight. So I'm going to put Ryan on screen, and Ryan's going to give us a little bit of his background. There we go. All right. Sacramento Appraisal blog. Welcome, Ryan.
Hey, thanks so much, Janice. And hi, everybody. It's an honor to be here, and look forward to this conversation tonight.
Excellent. Excellent. So Ryan, maybe you can go back and tell us a little bit about your story. I'm sure you started somewhere in business or real estate, and then how did you end up being an appraiser? And what gives you the right to tell us all about appraisals tonight?
Sure thing. Well, I became an appraiser in 2003, and so I'm in my 12th, going on my 13th year here, and it happened because I used to be a teacher, actually, and my wife got pregnant from me, and
good,
which is a good thing. And we always wanted her to be able to stay at home and quit her job and be able to, focus on getting the kids, raised until, school age. And, now she's an author and such. But anyway, I had friends who were appraisers, and my teacher salary wasn't going to cut it. And I said, can you train me? And sure enough, they did. And the rest is history. And what makes me qualified? Well, the state of California has continued to give me my license as a certified appraiser, but I pay very close attention to the market, and I teach real estate agents frequently. Every single month, I'm in several real estate offices. In fact, tomorrow I'm doing a 3-hour training for hire at one real estate office. And so, and I run a very successful local blog to talk about the market and talk about how do we make sense of value in neighborhoods.
Excellent. And I like how you tied in. I know you probably went into teaching because you had that passion, and I love how you're tying in your talents in training and teaching people into the appraisal market, because it's not like every appraiser has a blog and explains to everyone all the ins and outs of appraising. So you're really, tying in those talents and abilities you have as a teacher, and then helping everyone else understand value in the market. So I really appreciate how you're doing that. And in fact, that's one reason I run this show. So I have a PhD, and I was trained to teach biology. And of course, in marine biology, there's not that many jobs. And so really by having the show, I kind of have my own teaching and training platform, and I can help people and like to train and give training exercises and handouts, and I have a blog and all the different things like you do as well. So
that's great. That's great. Then you can always drop in, endoplasmic reticulum and photosynthesis and all these big words, and
exactly.
impress people. And maybe then they'll, they'll sell you a house and you can
Wh-
flip it. So.
Which have nothing to do with real estate, absolutely, right? But
Yeah,
what,
no.
what did you teach?
I taught history and grammar. Yeah.
Okay, history and grammar. Okay, excellent. I'm sure. And how many years did you do that?
You know what? I had a brief stint as a teacher, and before, believe it or not, I was a youth pastor. So
Oh,
for
excellent.
6 years before that. And so, yeah.
Yeah, that's still all about training people, though, isn't it?
Yeah, all about the teaching, and I can't escape it. And that's what, yeah, it's interesting. This point in my career, just being able to actually combine that passion into talking about data and trends. It's actually really exciting, and just a reminder that no matter what you can do, your gifts can be there, and you don't have to wait for that perfect job or the perfect opportunity. I'd say use your gifts right now.
Yeah, yeah, and same thing. I mean, I was in marine biology, then I learned biotech and molecular biology, and I wanted to teach that, and then I got into real estate and find myself wanting to teach that. So you can't escape your destiny, right?
Yeah, true.
All right, so I'm going to start with the real estate part of the broadcast now that we got our stories out there. Oh, another thing, if you'll notice the background behind Ryan, I found out that we both really like wood, although he likes to repurpose wood into different projects. And if you're on his Facebook page, he's always having a different project where he's finding a piece of wood or a frame or some wood and building something for his kids. Or, I think he built this whole almost like a paintball course in the backyard for the kid's birthday. So he kind of likes building things too, and that works in with real estate as well.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you, Ryan, why is determining the value of the house such an important piece of the puzzle for beginning real estate agents and experienced ones as well? Because we can all, make mistakes and learn as we go along.
Sure. Well, when you're going to flip a house, it's so important to acquire it at a reasonable level. I mean, no one wants to overpay for a house, particularly if that means that you're going to have a really tight value range for if you want to flip the house. And so it's very critical to get it for the right price. And when I say the right price, that might even be a little bit less than true market value, because you just need that room to be able to invest more in the property, flip it, and actually make a profit. So it's absolutely critical.
Right, and it's especially important if you want to do real changes to the house instead of what we call putting lipstick on a pig.
Yeah,
so
I've seen that.
If you want to make it, if you want to do the plumbing and electrical and make it really a new house, you have to be able to get some sort of a discount and know the value of kind of a trashy house. So
yeah. No, absolutely. And one of the problems, Janice, is that I see is that sometimes investors or anyone new in real estate, just because you have a license or just because you have a fat bank account and you can afford the house, doesn't mean that you have your head wrapped around value yet. Okay. And the market is this humbling thing. And those of us who have been in real estate for a long time, I mean, we learn things every day about the market still. But one of the things about investing is that you drop into this neighborhood, and then it's just so critical to get that value right, but so easy, I think, to get it wrong because we end up making the wrong comparisons.
Exactly, because we're not as experienced as you, and so we're kind of guessing. And most of us aren't getting a bank loan when we buy it. We're using a hard money lender. They will get their own appraisal, but sometimes they evaluate it on their own because they have market experience. So we do try to, and the hard money lender often doesn't really care as much what we get as top value, as long as the part that they put into the house, is covered. So it's really important to know the ARV when you're going to be finished, because and some things get discounted more than you might expect, because that's where you're making the profit is in that top margin above what the private lender gave to you. So.
Absolutely. And so, I mean, I think fundamentally we just ask, what does it look like to really value a property? And it all comes down to making the right comparisons, making the right context. Okay. And so some people would use price per square foot or all these different metrics, but it comes down to if you bought an apple what are other apples actually selling for in the neighborhood? And so that would be a property that's similar in size, similar in location, similar condition. And so that home is completely outdated. And so the question to ask is, what are other competitively sized properties that are also outdated selling for? And that really helps tell the story of value. And on the after repair value side, I mean, it's really the simple thing. What are those properties that have already been upgraded? What are they actually selling for in the market? And so we begin to make those comparisons and think, well, here's this house, it's 1,200 square feet. I'm going to add 500 square feet. And so you want to start to look at what's that 1,700 square foot house or so selling for that's already upgraded. And that tells us what the market's willing to pay. But, a lot of new investors would look at a situation and think, okay, I picked up this property for $300,000. I'm going to put $100,000 into it, and I want to make, 10% real estate fees and 10% profit. So we're going to list it at $480,000. All right, but the problem is that if that property isn't, the resale market is maybe, what if it's at $420,000? Then all of a sudden the numbers don't make sense at all, and they would make sense if you could pick up that property at $200,000, but all of a sudden, it just doesn't add up just because you put $100,000 into it.
And I'll say back when we were getting a lot more of the REOs, it was fairly easy for the newer investors because you were buying a lot of cookie cutter properties that were within a neighborhood with a lot of different comps. So they had the same layout. There was a model match down the street. Very easy to get comps. And as those properties, got rehabbed and are not on the market anymore, you're seeing people go after what I call a unique or a custom property where there really aren't any model matches, and it's much harder to determine value. So for that reason, and also for price, what you've seen is those investors be priced out of the market, and you have some experienced investors, at least in Southern California, left in the market who know how to value those kind of custom homes where there's no model match for them to go for. We always felt much safer in the neighborhoods where there's plenty of those houses and you can see the values, ratchet up and down. When there were tons of REOs in the market, I like to look for something that was a bimodal distribution. In other words, there's a whole pile of houses that had a lower value with a peak and nothing in the middle, and then a pile of houses with a second peak, and those were the rehabbed houses. When you could find that, you really knew that was an area to rehab in. But if you just see kind of an average big median of prices, it's hard to pick your values there. So
I remember. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to ask you, how would a new investor get started in determining values when they make offer? Kind of jumping into the meat of it. But if you had something else to say, go ahead and do that.
Oh, I was just going to mention, I think your point on the distressed market here locally, at one time, about 6 years ago, 70% of all sales were REOs, 70%. And right now it's only about 5%. And so when the whole bottom of the market disappears, what it does is it sort of pushes values a little tighter. Okay. And so there was this huge disparity where you could pick up properties at a distressed price level. And then there was a lot of room because the top of the market was a whole lot higher from that low level. But what's happened right now is that you have the top of the market, then the lower level has been pushed up. And so there's less room to flip. And so that's why a lot of investors, they just have to be creative about how to pick up their properties, nail the price, or pick up a property, then add square footage or add a bathroom, or go to those neighborhoods where you're going to pay a little bit more and it's a little bit more challenging maybe to gauge value because you don't have 10 beater model matches in the same neighborhood. And so but in terms of valuing, I think one of the most important things is you need to have access to MLS. Okay, I know on a fundamental level, to avoid, you just need the most relevant information possible. And so that might involve working with a realtor, working with an appraiser, or getting your own real estate license. That's critical for any investor to have the most recent data. And it's just so important to look at the immediate neighborhood, when we start to look at values, okay, it's tempting to look at an entire zip code, or we can, say it's within a 1 mile radius. But sometimes if we're pulling comps from an area and we use this wide territory, 1 mile or so, we might have 7 or 8 different markets in that 1 mile stretch. And so I think it's important when choosing comps to start in the immediate neighborhood and just start investigating, what have properties really gone for here? Where's the bottom of the market? Where's the top of the market? Okay, and we've got to get a sense of that very first. And then what's the competitive market doing? So if you have that 1,400 square foot house, and you start looking, well, how about 1,250 to 1,600 square feet? Let's see what the market's doing in this area. And that'll give a good sense of, well, how much room is there to flip? Is this a good deal? Or, I'm really going to need to pick it up for less, or wow, this is a screaming deal. And it's really helpful just to begin to see those things.
Do you, and one thing a lot of us have, if we're not a realtor ourselves, we have a realtor on our team, or one of us, on the team is licensed, even though they're not acting as a realtor, but just so they have MLS access. And then some people use, they pay for the service, they pay for RealQuest or something, so they can get similar services. And then, would you suggest people go and look at a lot of houses that are open and on the market, so they really get a feel for what is a 1,200 square foot house versus a 1,400 square foot house, especially if you're trying to get values within a small market area?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Survey the neighborhood. And if these houses sold, then you can look up an MLS. You can even go to Zillow and see what were the interior photos like. Okay. If you are an MLS, look at the days on market. How long did it take to sell this property? Because you could see something that was maybe dumped on the market. You could see something that, hey, it spent 150 days on the market. Maybe there was a problem with this. There's something going on. And so we get a sense of the market that way. But you definitely want to walk through the open houses also, because I always encourage investors, don't overdo it for the neighborhood. Okay, sometimes we want to think, I need these high quality upgrades and we need to try to bring Beverly Hills into this zip code, when really I would say don't do more than the last person did. Okay, whoever's getting the top of the market, see what they did and try to do something competitive if you're also shooting for the top. Okay, but if you don't need to do that 50,000 kitchen remodel if everyone else is using IKEA cabinets. And so, I think it's critical to, and part of knowing the market is to really know, what are investors doing? What does the top look like again? And that's so important. And can I just mention real quick, there's, in every single market, there is a price ceiling. And part of when we parachute into a neighborhood and start looking at values, we have to be aware where the bottom is and where the top is. And we might look at sales even over the last year and just think, what's the top of the market here? Because we don't want to try to over improve the property and then market it for 20% more than anything that is ever sold in the neighborhood. Because when we think about it, when they're faced with that price option, well, if they're going to spend that much, they might choose a neighborhood that they think of as superior. And so I think that's why it's so important to walk through the listings. Don't do more than they did. Find your edge in the market, and then you should be able to price according to what they did if those were legitimate sales. Okay,
excellent. That's a good tip. Well, would you give people sort of a 3 or 4 steps on what if, say, they're looking at some properties to buy in a particular market? What are 3 or 4 steps they can go through so they know they've kind of covered their bases? Maybe 5 steps,
Sure.
However many you need.
I mean, in terms of knowing that they're getting the right value, or what?
In determining values. In other words, number of bedrooms, the square footage, what you should compare, things like that. Not the outliers, but just the basics for now.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So we want to stick, first of all, with square footage is one of the big metrics that we really want to pay careful attention to, and obviously bedroom and bathroom count. But you look, if it's a 1,600 square foot house, it probably has at least 3 bedrooms. It probably has 2 bathrooms. And so when we start to look at similar square footage, we're probably looking at something that's fairly similar, but obviously we want to pay attention to whether it has the same bathroom count, because that certainly can make a difference. But I'd say, like I said before, look at all sales, look at all competitive sales over maybe the last year or even the last 2 year. What is really sold right here in this unique neighborhood where values are all over the place? Okay, then start going out a little bit further in the neighborhood. If in your MLS you can draw boundaries around the neighborhood, do that.
Yeah.
So that way you're not, getting that 1 mile radius and then the neighborhood is really right here. So you want to draw boundaries around the neighborhood. Just look at those sales, okay? And so that's going to be your critical part. But I'll say this: pay very careful attention to the listings. Okay, how long have listings been on the market, and what's getting into contract? Okay, because a lot of times we think of value, that value is just all about the sales, but I would turn the table and say, well, sales tell us about what the market is like, and it would tell us what the market used to be like maybe a couple months ago when that property went into contract. But when we want to gauge the temperature of the current market, what's able to get into contract right now? Okay. And if we look and see that all listings, maybe inventories increase and all of a sudden listings aren't selling, then that tells us the temperature of the market has changed. And so it's really critical, if you're trying to gauge that after repair value, to not be super, super aggressive. Okay. And right now it's the end of summer. And if the market's anything like it was these last 2 years, there's a really definitive seasonal trend where the market softens in the fall. So normal. People freak out over that, but it's so normal. But the thing is that Joe Flipper or Georgina Flipper, whatever we'd say, might go in there and then think, this is great. I'm going to look at that sale during the top of the market just down the street. It sold in March, sold in April. And then we're going to command an even higher price. But the thing is that we really need to look at those similar listings and the similar pendings, because what are they actually able to get? Okay. So that would be one of my biggest tips.
Yeah. And I'd say something like that happened to us last year. I'm in San Diego, but I flip houses in Sacramento. So in the Sacramento market, I don't know whether it was our deal flow or what, but we ended up getting a house that got delayed for permit reasons or whatever, and it went on the market in late October, and we got a buyer like in early December, and we just like held on to that guy. He didn't close till January, but it was like, oh, this is so painful.
Yeah.
That happened.
And it has been interesting just in the Sacramento area. Then I've read other places too, but you just have that really definitive seasonal trend where the market just slows, and then all of a sudden everyone's thinking, what's happening? But the market changed. And so as the market normalizes, I think we can expect to see that if the market does persist on a normal trend these days.
And I think if there's a lot of men in real estate, but if they thought like their wife or a woman, what woman is going to pack up her kitchen the week before Thanksgiving and then not get it unpacked till after Christmas? It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
Or pack up the kids in October, November, uproot them from school, switch. I mean, that's huge. There's a reason why sales volume, hits its stride, in March, April, May, and you see the most sales then, and then you see sales sort of slough off, and there's more listings in the fall. And so it just underscores, hey, price according to the market, whether you're in a hot market or you're a seasonal softer market. So that's critical.
Yeah. And if you're following that and you know the pattern, make your offers in December, because that's when you're going to get a good price discount. Don't try to sell it in December, but buy them in December.
Exactly. Yeah. The best time to buy a house, of course, a lot of really good inventory is not on the market in the latter part of the year. But the thing is that if it is on the market, it means that someone needs to sell it, whether it's an investor who's like, hey, I bought this in June and it's just been prolonged, I need to dump this, or if it's an owner occupant who just needs to get rid of it, then that can
Job
actually be a
change.
prime
Yeah.
opportunity if you can pull it together, and if you're
Mm.
not hosting Thanksgiving and the holidays.
Yeah. So, so make your offers on Christmas Eve and see what happens.
See what happens. That's right.
All right. So, we can get into some of the things that come up now. I'll say, what kind of roadblocks would investors come upon in terms of, I can think of examples like add-ons, square footage. And I noticed there was one in your blog. I just previewed it a day or two ago about adding on a bonus room, and then there's no window in the bedroom because you added the bonus room onto the end of the bedroom, and then that bedroom didn't count even though you added square footage to the house. So there's all these little tricks that can trip up an investor because they don't know the rules about what qualifies as an official bedroom and usage. Or I think one was like a studio. No, you couldn't enter it from the house. You had to go outside, so it doesn't qualify in the square footage of the house at all. So there's kind of some roadblocks that have to do with when you do try to greatly improve the property.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, one of the things about real estate is that it just takes the way that we learn is through experience. And,
Mm,
hopefully we don't mess up too much. And, and if we know the basics, and if investors have a good team, then they're going to be set up for success. I mean, I see a lot of newbies really, really succeed, but there's always those times when there's a learning experience in where you thought, oh, that was a bigger hit to value than I anticipated because there wasn't a garage. Okay. And so sometimes
right.
we might be tempted to think, yeah, I'm just going to subtract $10,000, no big deal. But then the market responds really and speaks resoundingly in a negative way and thinks, yeah, we're not willing to pull the trigger on this property. And so you see that the adjustment might actually be much greater. And of
Mm,
course, the way that we would know the adjustment, we would look for that apple. We have the apple that doesn't have a garage. What has another apple sold for without a garage too? So we make that apples to apples similar comparison. And so, those things can be roadblocks, but sometimes non-permitted additions can be a headache. Sometimes
you mean a
tax
glom
records.
on? A glom
Yeah,
on? We call
yeah.
them glom
And so
ons.
yeah, and sometimes tax records is simply wrong about the square footage.
Mm-hmm.
They're wrong for whatever reason. Information has been entered incorrectly, and so
Mm-hmm.
I'd say if you get the sense that, wow, this property its tax record says 1,700, but it looks so much bigger, or it really looks smaller, then you might want to have it measured. Or
Mm-hmm.
maybe through the hard money lender, just pay real careful attention to what the appraiser measured in the sketch, and then at least you have a point of reference to see if maybe it's a little bit different than what it says in tax records.
Yeah, and that does come up. We have a rental here, and that's a condo, and we went to do, I guess, a refi or something for it, and the bank said, well, it's 1,300 square feet, and I was like, it's 2 bedroom, 2 bath, and I was like, it's no way, it's like 980, and they said,
Yeah.
well, that's what the tax record said. So I had to call the tax assessor. Then they have their own in-house tax appraiser, and it took a couple months for it to actually show up on the tax record. So these things can cause delays. But what she did was just look back at the plans when they built the whole development and said, oh yeah, that unit is supposed to be 980, but when they transferred all that information to the tax records, they put on a unit size of another unit. So
Nice for the assessor. Yeah.
yeah. So I had to, because I kept saying, why is it always, why does the bank always say it's bigger than it is? And it was just done wrong in the first place. So.
Yep, I see that all the time. Or sometimes, like there is a house literally on my desk right now. I have to finish this appraisal by tomorrow. Tax record says 2,600 something, but it's really about 3,000 square feet. So that can make a huge difference in the value. Enormous.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always better to find square footage than to lose square footage.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I think that's a good strategy there. Well, tell us a little bit about, I think one of the things that comes up is when you don't have enough comps in an area, you have to look at expanding your distance, and I'll put myself on screen there. So you have to look at expanding your distance out or going back in time. So kind of
Sure.
give us some ins and outs of what do you do in those situations?
Okay, here's what I do first. Before going out boldly where no one has gone before, I want to make sure that I'm understanding the immediate neighborhood market. So I'm using my MLS tool, I'm drawing the neighborhood boundaries, and I'd rather go back in time to see what properties were selling for last year or the year before. And we can look in early 2013, early 2014, and then see, okay, well, we know the market's moved up since that time period. And so we start to get a few reference points that, okay, that makes sense. We can even look at withdrawn listings and things that didn't sell in the immediate neighborhood, because those might be clues also into, okay, the market wasn't willing to pay this price for this neighborhood. Now, should we go out? Absolutely. We can go out. The question is not how far should we go, but the question is, where should we go? Okay, a lot of people say, well, appraisers have to stick within a 1 mile radius. That's what Fannie Mae says, but
what if you're in 5 acre zoning?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that makes sense. Yeah.
Fannie Mae does not have a 1 mile radius rule for appraisers. Okay. So that sometimes underwriters will say, hey, appraisers, we want you to stick within 1 mile. If you go out, explain why you went outside a typical 1 mile radius. All right. So first, let's just remember, there's no such thing as a neighborhood that's an actual 1 mile radius. Okay.
Right.
They come in all different shapes and sizes. Sometimes the neighborhood is larger. And so we might go 1.5 miles just because that subdivision is huge and buyers really would be looking in all places. But the tricky part, though, is that when we start to go out, we have to ask the question, is this really a competitive area or not? Okay. And so because it's really easy to cherry pick higher sales. I see it all the time. I show up to a house and then someone's pulled, wants to share some comps with me, and then, they're properties that happen to meet the contract price, but, they're 14 miles away or whatever they are. Okay. It's usually not that far, but sometimes it's like, well, wow, that's really a superior area in terms of price. And then, so it's not a real good comparison. So if we do go out further, though, the way that we know that it's actually competitive, we could compare older sales in the immediate market area with older sales in that neighborhood that we're comparing it to. Are they similar? Are they at the same level? Were they at the same level, last year or 2 years ago? Those are clues that, well, yeah, they've historically sold at similar levels. And so unless something has changed, in the present, then those are probably good sales to use.
That's a good point. I was thinking of a student that I had once who they had bought a property before they became my coaching student, because I wouldn't have suggested that they do this, but they had bought a property through one of these programs where you're in a ballroom in Orlando and you buy a property in Detroit and you've never seen it and you don't have the neighborhood, but the person there tells you how great it is.
Of course they do.
Yeah.
Of course they do.
And so he told me about the property, and I have properties in Detroit. I've sold and flipped and kept rentals in Detroit. And they said, well, I'm paying this much for this house because it's right on the edge of the neighborhood, and that neighborhood's expanding and it's going to go up in price. And I said, okay, let's just do a Google Earth. Let's fly over this place and I'm going to show you what's going on in that neighborhood. And it turned out that there's sort of in California, we have these concrete aqueducts. It's kind of like that. It's a canal. Yeah. It's a channelized river that's built in concrete that goes through the neighborhood, and people's mind in that neighborhood. I said, look at all the vacant lots and the burn downs and stuff on one side of the canal where your house is. And then on the other side of the canal, look at all the nice houses, because you can see a lot on Google Earth. And I said, that canal or that freeway or interstate, whatever you want to call it, is a boundary lane in people's minds. And it's never going to go away. It's that boundary there. It's not going to creep out so that one street gets better as one. No, it's a completely separate neighborhood. And so he was able to get out of the deal and not close on it. And I think he even got his deposit back. But those kind of
That's
things
good.
happen when people see something close by, but they don't know about the physical realities of that neighborhood, which could be the canal or the freeway, or there's often a lot of cheap houses, and you look at it on the map and it's like right next to the interstate. So it's, there's a big interstate above you and it's so loud, those properties are worth less. And it's nothing to do with square footage, that's for sure.
It's the power of location, and that just illustrates perfectly that reality that we need to draw the neighborhood boundaries. Because
Like a
on
zigzag.
on both sides of the freeway or that aqueduct in Detroit, you might have had the same zip code.
Yeah.
And so if you have the same zip code and you look at zip code trends, you think this is wonderful because the market is moving. Well, there's a lot of different markets within a market. And then one neighborhood might be experiencing tremendous decay, okay, or a series of streets or a subdivision, but then, right across that aqueduct might be experiencing a rebirth. And so that's where people are buying, paying top dollar, but that other side is just not the same. So true.
There's even some, it's here in San Diego, there's an area in I think it's Oceanside, where, everything west of I-5, we call it the 5, everything west of I-5 is, considered beach property. So it's way more expensive. But then right next to the freeway, there's like one road that's next to the freeway. And those properties are more similar in value to the properties on the other side of the freeway than they are to all the beachfront ones, within that quarter mile between them and the beach, because it's next to the freeway and it's just not, people just don't want it as much. So.
Yep. Location. Absolutely. So, and that reminds me, Janice, one of the things about value is that it's easy to underestimate the power of location. So sometimes we look, say, at a busy street and think, no big deal, and we sort of bring in our assumptions about real estate and think, oh, this is a great neighborhood and someone's going to just love living here because the layout's so nice. But then we kind of discount that, well, it's on a busy corner, or the light rails, it backs to the light rail, or something significant. And so that's why we have to look and really find those similar sales, because we think, well, there's probably a discount here, but how big is the discount? And the only way would be to look at properties that have sold with that adverse location versus properties that haven't. So.
Yeah, and I would say that as the market gets tighter, those kind of things come up. And I'm thinking about two points. One is, of all the properties we've bought in Sacramento recently, we've ended up buying everything that's on a corner. And I'm thinking, you always think of the corner as less value because you come around the corner and the lights go in the living room, but that's really all there was left for us to, buy and work on. So we have like 3 houses in different parts of Sacramento that are on the corner. And the other example I can think of is when people start doing new construction, a lot, I know in Utah, they would come down to the San Diego markets and try to sell these nice new houses. And they were, a half to a third, the price of what it costs in Southern California. So you just automatically think, well, that's cheap.
That's a great deal. Yeah.
They were pressuring people to, buy them, to put their deposit down and buy them sight unseen.
Yeah.
Because they hadn't built them yet anyway. And so, I was going to buy one from this one developer. And they said, well, you better get it before it's gone type thing, scarcity. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to come out there and look at them. And they said, oh, there won't be any left when you get her. I'm like, I don't care. So, I went out, and the thing that, they showed me the ones that they were trying to sell to investors, and they were building all throughout the neighborhood. But the ones they were offering to the out-of-state investors that were far away,
they were the worst ones.
Where the backyard had a fence, but it was going to back up to a trailer park.
Yep.
And they weren't the ones in the middle of the neighborhood. So, I didn't even buy in that neighborhood. I bought one other house from them that had a good view. And then I went and found a local developer who wasn't trying to sell to, out-of-state investors, and just made my own deal, with that guy, and bought 2 other ones. So that were, in a neighborhood where people were having the same builder build their second home. In other words, they were staying in the neighborhood and having him build another house. So I thought that really tells you that they like what the guy's doing, because if you live in a house, say for the first year, new construction, you're going to find all the things that the builder cut corners on. And
Oh,
these,
yes, you are. Yeah.
and these people were willing to buy a second house from the same builder after they lived in the first one for 4 or 5 years and wanted to move up. So to me, that was a really good indicator of the builder's quality. So that's where I wanted to put my money
Absolutely.
anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, no. It sounds like you were wise to avoid the other guys, the shysters, shall we call them?
Yeah, but it takes some doing, because if they say, well, there's only so many left, and everyone says, well, I can't come out this month, so people feel the pressure to buy something. But
Yeah.
there's more fish. There's more fish in the sea, right?
My general rule of thumb is when someone's trying to pressure me, something's bogus, and I can't stand when someone puts that pressure on me to make any decision, because it's like, hey, you know what, I can take my time. I don't have to make a decision right now to invest or to do whatever. That's just not a good policy. So
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit about what strategies investors can do to kind of determine that they're finding some good comps and making a good offer. Any other strategies you can share?
sure thing. Well, if you can, I mean, find those distressed properties. They're far and few in between, but try to write those letters to those homeowners and get in there, and try to buy off MLS if you can, because you're going to get you might be able to get a better deal on the house. But really in this market, I would say just go in and expect that you're probably going to add a bathroom, or maybe you're going to add some square footage to make that deal work, because it's not like the market was previously. I think one of the most important things is just make sure that the deal makes sense for you on both ends. Acquisition value is solid, but then really I would say make sure your after repair value is reflective of the actual neighborhood and not the market really far away. Okay, I see it all the time. Properties on the market, substantial remodel, and it's just not selling. And so and I feel bad, because there's been so much money invested, but really where the error occurred was in looking and not seeing that objective resale value, or just making a mistake. I mean, we all make value mistakes. Okay. One thing, if I could say, is to be really careful about using price per square foot to establish value for a property. It's
Yeah,
one of
can you go into some details on that? That'd be
Okay,
good.
so first, for any newbies, what is price per square foot? It's a really simple metric that we get by dividing the sales price by the square footage of the house. So imagine a house sells for $100,000. We wish, right? And then it's 1,000 square feet. So it would be 100,000 divided by 1,000 square feet. The price per square foot would be 100.
Right.
So here's where, let me walk through a scenario, because it's very, very easy to be wrong about value because of this. So say in a neighborhood, you see that 1,000 square foot house, it's very average, sells at 100,000. 100 is the price per square foot. But then you see a remodeled home sells for, say, 130,000. Okay, and then you look at that and go, okay, 130,000 divided by 1,000, price per square foot is 130. Okay, but then you see an utter fixer sell at 55,000. So you'd see the price per square foot there, 55,000 divided by 1,000 square feet is 55. So all of a sudden in a neighborhood, you see model matches swing from 55 to 130 price per square foot. Where real estate sin happens is that we pick this price per square foot out of the market and think, I'm going to use that one. And all of a sudden we apply this 125 or 130 figure, but it doesn't make sense for that property, because that property is very average. When we see average homes, they've sold around $100,000. So maybe there's this price per square foot range anywhere from sort of 95 to 105. That's kind of where the property should be hitting based on price per square foot figures. But then we're hijacking this figure from something that's not comparable. And so we can overestimate where value would be very easily. And so I hear a lot of people that in some of the classic areas, they think properties are going 400 a square foot in this neighborhood. And my question would be, well, which properties? Because I can
Mm.
pull up all sales over the past 3 months, and I might see a spread from 200 to 450 price per square foot in
Mm.
this area. And so I'd say, well, if my property is 1,000 square feet, that means my property is worth either 200,000 to 450,000.
Mm.
So do you see where we can get wrong about value very quickly? And so it's important, instead of using the price per square foot and hijacking that figure. I mean, if it's the right figure, great. But if it's the wrong figure, we can get into trouble. Let's find those similar sales. What are those fixtures actually selling for? And then what are those remodeled properties selling for?
Mm.
And the last thing I'd say is keep this in mind. Smaller houses actually tend to have a higher
Higher
price per square foot.
square foot,
So,
exactly.
so we see that small one with the high price per square foot. Everyone gets excited. We apply it to the
The
big
big
house that was
house.
just purchased. Think, yes, yes. But then it goes on the market and, oh, the wrong price per square foot was used. And
Right.
that's a really common error to make. I mean, really for a lot of the real estate community. And it's something in the teachings that I give and the trainings that I mention it. And I think it's such a valuable insight, because some brokers these days, they're not teaching their agents how price per square foot works. Now, it is a really valuable metric. I use it as an appraiser in every single appraisal, just to kind of see sort of the market, where here's the bottom and here's the range in the marketplace. Okay, but I'm not going to choose a price per square foot to value. I really want to see the comps. Okay,
Right. You're not going to take a price per square foot of a beautiful small condo and apply it to a 3,000 square foot house, because it's not gonna work.
I want to find that other condo. What are the condo sales actually going for? Find that similar comparison. Yeah.
Right. Like that example you gave where they applied the square footage price to a larger house, they probably both had 3 bedrooms or 4 or whatever. And so a person goes, well, it's a little bigger, but I still get the same number of bedrooms. They're not going to pay that price per square foot times, the square footage. They're going to discount it a little bit because it's a 4-bedroom house compared to the other one.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And believe me, I do a lot of private appraisals. In fact, most of my work is private deals. And sometimes I remember there was an agent who hired me from out of town, from Florida, and he said, hey, price per square foot is 250, 255. But by the end of the appraisal, when I got this done for sort of a private sale, it didn't make sense with that size of home. It made a lot of sense when you looked at smaller homes in the neighborhood. Yeah, they were selling at that level, but the larger homes, not at all. And even I appraised something recently in the neighborhood. I looked back and I think I got value right, a year and a half later. And then I see, okay, that value that I gave was very consistent for the market at the time, even though in his mind, it was a lot higher because of this price per square foot. So.
Absolutely. Okay, I got one more question here. If you add on to a property, kind of what might give you the most value? Is it adding a bonus room or a master bath or suite? I know it depends on the market. That's what you're going to say, but
Yeah.
Give us a few examples.
Well, okay, and that's always the answer that people hate. They think, okay, you're going to say it depends on the market, but here's the thing. We live in a society where we want the quick answer. We want the neat little list of every, here's what the kitchen will add. Here's what a bathroom will add in value, but it's not that easy to figure out all that stuff and to have our itemized list and think, well, that one switch plate added $3 in value. It just doesn't work like that. And so, but I will say that, I mean, square footage, bigger houses tend to sell for more, relatively speaking in the neighborhood. They're going to command a premium. But I will say that layout matters greatly also. And so, you don't want to have this 5-bedroom house with a tinky, tiny living room. And so you kind of have to look and assess each situation. What's going to sell the property though? Yeah, the layout, the kitchen, the location, the bathrooms, all those things. And so, I can't give you a really specific answer other than just say, try to do what other people are doing in the neighborhood and don't do any more, because you'll probably maximize your money by by just trying
Right.
to get to that top level. So
Yeah.
let someone else upgrade it extensively.
Yeah. Right. Once they're in there, I know
Yeah.
one of the things that people do is you can add on a bonus room because you don't have the plumbing and everything else that goes into a different type of room. So you're just adding square footage, and people do like that. And it costs you almost the least
Yeah.
amount of money, to add that on.
Oh, definitely. And I see a lot of people too, when you buy a 3-1, a lot of investors lately have added that extra bathroom
Mm-hmm.
and then and made and expanded a master. And so kind of all in one, the same place in the floor plan. And so they maximize their costs, but oh boy, they can really reap a profit though when adding the right square footage there. So
Mm-hmm.
I will say, just be careful about the garage conversions, though. I touched on that before. It
Mm.
looks like a really easy way to add square footage, but you take away the utility of the garage. I'm a big advocate of keep the garage functional, because that's probably what the market expects, unless it's in a neighborhood with a ton of garage conversions. And if those are fetching premiums, and go according to the market.
Right, right. And in California, we don't have the attic or the basement, so
Yeah.
really all people have is their garage. I just
Yep.
that reminded me of an example. I thought of it earlier when you were talking, so I'm glad you brought up the garage thing. We did a remodel in an area that's closer to downtown San Diego, but it's still in a nice neighborhood. And there was already a garage conversion, and so the square footage, and it wasn't a good one, it just looked crappy,
Yeah.
but the square footage was already on the tax assessor's plan, so we didn't want to rip it out and lose the square footage, because that would really decrease our values. And so we kind of looked around the neighborhood, and it's in a neighborhood where it's close to San Diego. When people start having a bigger family, they don't want to leave the area because it's kind of close to the beach, close to
Yeah.
work. And so I'd say 3/4 of the houses in that area had a garage conversion.
Yeah.
And they might put a shed in the back or something. So we were confident then that if we remodeled and did the garage conversion, we would get the highest value from that. And it's
Yep.
you think, well, so a gal moved in there with a couple of kids. She didn't have a husband, and there really wasn't any need for the garage. She parked in the driveway, and then we put a shed in the back. And but we were able to take that house from. I mean, and here's another thing that we've been able to do is, if you have a second bath, like the master is just a shower stall, and if you can take out sort of a linen closet or some kind of closet that's in the hallway, you can often convert that bathroom into a full-size master. So we took
Yeah.
like a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath, and made it into a 4-3 by using the
Yeah.
garage. So we made the
And that's
master into
great.
a full bath, and then in the garage we made a bedroom, a sitting room, and a full bathroom.
That's good. It sounds like it made a lot of sense for the neighborhood. So
Yeah,
kudos
that
to you.
that one was great because the plumbing was already in the garage because of the washer dryer, and so we were able to do that. But I was nervous about it, but I um, wouldn't have done it if there weren't other garage conversions.
No, and I think when you make the garage not feel like a garage, that's when buyers really start to want to pay more for it. And so
Mm,
sometimes the illusion is, well, I erect one wall of, here's drywall, and then I have 400 extra square feet. But, well, no, not really, because the laundry's still in there. There's the hot
mhm.
water heater, and it
Right.
feels it feels like a garage. It really doesn't feel like living area. And when it feels like living area, that's when you can command more value for it.
Hmm. Hmm. And that's a good point. I mean, one of the examples I can think of is we just in the house we're working on in Sacramento, we are doing that with it's a standalone garage, and so we're drywalling the garage walls, and we put in can lights in the ceiling, and that's all we
Nice.
did. So somebody can use it as a garage or an office. So it's
Yep.
not going to
And
increase the square footage, but in the buyer's mind, it's space.
I think so. And then what you've done is that you've set the stage to market it, and with, I mean, very little cost there too, and to say it's ready for you to, to add a studio or whatever you need to do,
Mm,
accessory dwelling, or, whatever would be, legally permitted there for zoning. And
Right.
so I think that's great.
Yeah, so that's one way to do it. Just the drywall and paint and a few lights, make it kind of and we kept the storage cabinets that were in the back, but you could just basically pull your car in there and it's still a garage. So.
Yeah, no, and if I could say, Janice, one of the things that I've noticed in the market is that in 2005, I mean, or especially 2003, 2004, granite was huge. I mean, it could command a huge premium, and the builders were just charging so much money for granite. But then the market fell to pieces. All of a sudden, builders started trying. Granite was in every single house because they had to have them in there for buyers to buy them. And then you saw this wave go out there. So all your investors and flippers are putting granite in as a standard. But, as the markets change, we can't keep doing the same upgrades in every single house or every single neighborhood, because sometimes we have to really look and think, wow, I better not put those cherry cabinets and that dark gray granite that I was doing in 2009 and 2010, because it looks like maybe you have a flat edge granite that's a little thinner, or maybe you have some gray cabinets or some white cabinets, or maybe some subway tile on the black backsplash, instead of standard tile or full slab granite. And so it's interesting to see how the market changes, and tastes change so quickly too. I think in light of Pinterest and House and so many other websites, that we really just have to stay in tune with those, because buyers will grow to expect different things. Or some buyers I talked to who were hunting for homes over the last year, they said, I am so over granite. It is just ridiculous. And so how do you stand out in an ocean of saturation with something like granite? You have to have that style there, and you have to be in tune with, who's doing a great job in the market. And I know locally there's some agents that I would look to. Those people are just, they're doing it right. And you have that extra sense of style. It may have cost just a little bit more, but it can help the property be all that much more marketable, because there's that fresh style that people really think, okay, this one stands out slightly.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, one of the things we've seen is, using an alternative stone that's not granite. And then some of the colors that come in is there's a lot of white and gray, and you touched on that with the subway tile, and I've seen that's what we've been doing up there, and that's what's been selling. But I do remember when granite was like at a premium, and some of my rentals I bought the granite squares because they were floor tiles, and we put them on the counter. And then within like 2 years, all of a sudden, my property manager says, well, whenever I remodel one of these Detroit rentals, which are worth somewhere between 25 and 50 grand, the whole house is worth that much. They put granite in the kitchen. And I was like, why are you doing that? They said, because it's so cheap and it's indestructible. So, and we get better tenants, because we get someone who really cares about it, and that he gets more traffic, and then he can kind of cherry pick the best tenant from there. So I said, that makes sense,
That does make sense. That's interesting. I haven't heard that take on doing that.
That's what he was doing. Yeah. So no more Formica.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yo, don't do Formica. So, but I see even like Butcher Block, and there's some really creative products out there in the market, and it's nice to see some changes. But it's funny too, because today's granite is, it's going to be, it'll at some point that kitchen remodel 5 years ago, some of those are already starting to look outdated, and they're the shag carpet and foil wallpaper of 2005. So,
the foil. Yeah, now I remember that metallic look. Is that what you're talking about? From the 70s. Yeah. Oh, the green avocado shag. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. That hasn't come back yet. They say everything comes back, but I'm not sure. I'm still waiting, but I don't know.
I don't think that one's going to come. Yeah. All right. So let's see. One more question. So what kind of step would you ask my listeners to take, get started right away this week to just get a better feel for their values? I mean, even if they're not making an offer, what can they do to improve their understanding of their market?
Sure. I think one of the best things is just to pay attention. If you're trying to work a certain neighborhood, just, log in every day and see what's new. And oftentimes in MLS systems, you log in and there's maybe a 24-hour market watch or a 7-day market watch, and just try to note the differences every day. Is there an increase in price reductions? Is there an increase in sales or pendings? And so you kind of gauge the market. Okay, there's more listings, there's less sales, there's more price reductions. Then you get a sense for how things are going. And so I think that's important to pay attention to, and that can be done in a matter of seconds every day, just by looking. So I'd encourage that. I want to say subscribe to my blog. That sounds narcissistic, but I have one post every single week, okay? And one of the posts is hyper local, where I have my big monthly market posts. I talk about Sacramento trends, but the other posts, 3 a week or 3 a month, really talk about a valuation issue. And I think the way that we become experts is that we continue to grow, and we put out feelers and to try to absorb quick information and just to think through issues. Well, what should I do with that bonus room or that non-permitted addition? Because when we really start to learn particularly how to think like an appraiser, how to value a property like an appraiser, what lenders are looking for, that really can make a difference in establishing an after repair value. So the last thing I'd say, if you're whatever market you're in, find an appraiser that you can build a relationship with, that you can email, that you can ask questions to. Take that appraiser out to lunch. Mexican food. I love. I'm just kidding. No, but I'm serious.
Make an offers there. Yeah.
Take that appraiser out and say, and pay the appraiser for his or her time to say, look, I don't want to try to use you for to sort of meet this value, fudge the numbers, none of that funny business, okay? But go out and say, like I did this with an investor a while back. We sat down, and I know this is a long answer, I apologize, but hopefully it's good. But we sat down with a map of Sacramento and talked about neighborhoods. Here's where you're getting the best rents, the best bang for your buck. Okay, this is an or a market that's a little bit undervalued right now. And so talk with that market specialist, pay for someone's time, because you can pick up a lot about a local market or about neighborhoods just by talking to the people who really know that area. So that's my tip, my long tip. So thank you.
Excellent tip. All right. So I have asked the people watching if they had any questions, and we don't have any typed in. So I guess that means you just did such a good job teaching that, you've answered everyone's question. So
that's one way to look at it. So
that's a good comment, because I asked him about 5 minutes ago when you were talking. I type your questions in, and no one has any right now. So that's really good. And I'm glad that if everyone looks at, Ryan's lower third there, it says his website is sacramentoappraisalblog.com. And you can go there, and there's a lot of really good information. And it's not just about Sacramento, it's about appraising in general. And so I really like that. And then the other thing that I'm going to offer you is on the right-hand side, if you're watching the replay. If you're watching on YouTube, you won't see this, so I'll spell it out for you. But if you're watching the replay, and if you're looking for how to develop your own private money sources, it says, I have an ebook called Find Private Lenders ebook. So you can click right on that download link on the right of the replay, and it will take you right over to download the free PDF on my website. And if you're on YouTube or watching it someplace else where you don't see the right-hand side and all the plugins, it's wisewealthuniversity.com/PV lending. PV stands for private. So Wise Wealth University, just like my lower third here, .com/PV lending. And if you go to the website, the main website, there's a link for it. It'll take you over to the ebook. And so there's an ebook there, and then kind of a 10-day course, but really you'll get probably 4 emails over the course of those 10 days, helping you step through the material and to make sure that you're kind of doing the homework that's in the ebook. And that'll get you started on finding your own private lenders, because the better lending that you can do, and the source of your funds also has an effect on what you can pay for the property and your profit. So if you have some private lenders that aren't brokers and they're getting a nice percentage from you, they'll be quite happy, but you won't be paying a hard money lender the points and extra things that they get by finding you a private lender. So, that's kind of I like to demystify private lending, and hard money lenders aren't magic. They're certainly useful when you're getting started, but a hard money lender is really someone who has a bunch of private lenders that he met before you met them. So what I'm saying is go out and meet your own, talk to your friends, neighbors, and the book steps you through the process of, how to find people and how to practice your kind of script on different people. So I encourage people to go get, it's free. So go get the free ebook, and that'll help you get better value when you're trying to flip a house. So I want to thank Ryan for coming on tonight. I know he has a busy day and a busy appraisal schedule, and he has his kids and everything else that he has to deal with, just like the rest of us. So I appreciate your time, Ryan. And we met on, I think, Google Plus probably 2 years ago. And yeah, I just I follow his posts and see what he posts on, Twitter and Facebook, and you're everywhere. So we all are, social media.
Thanks so much, Janice, for having me. It was nice to get to know you too, and have a conversation. I hope that it's helpful for everyone, and anyone, email Janice if you have appraisal questions, or, you're welcome to email me or hit us up on Twitter or Facebook, any of those networks.
Okay, yes, that's a good point. On my website, wisewealthuniversity.com, if you go to /resources, and this is really just for people who watch, the Hangouts. So /resources, I have a list of resources that I've accumulated from the different Hangouts, as well as speakers, things that speakers give out for free, like a spreadsheet or something. So I will put a link to Ryan's blog on there. And so that if you go to the blog and then you want to ask him some questions, that'll be wisewealthuniversity.com /resources.
You're the best. Thanks.
So you can have a backlink to your blog, which would be nice. So anyway, Ryan, thank you so much for joining me tonight. And thank you everyone for coming and listening. I hope you enjoy the real estate investor hangouts that we do. It's a weekly series every Thursday night. So if you're watching from YouTube, go ahead and subscribe, and you can watch future hangouts with me. And thank you, Ryan, for coming tonight.
Hey, thanks, Janice. Take care, okay?
All right, bye-bye.
All right.